Hello, hello, and welcome back to For Book Sake. I am Heather Roberts.
I am Veronica Adams, and we are 1852 Media.
Yes, and today, oh my goodness, what a week in publishing that we have had.
Yes.
You know, with the return of our friend Nate onto TikTok.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, I know. I had to mention it. For those that don't remember, Nate Lemke wrote a book called Manic Pixie E-Girl.
Yes, the Manic Pixie E-Girl. That's right.
And he took a very interesting marketing tactic that wasn't well received, and
to say the least.
to say the least. I'm being kinder than I need to be.
Very, very.
Yeah, way kinder than I need to be. And now he's back on the internet and is selling books apparently in his TikTok shop. So there's
Good for
that.
him. He's
I
hustling.
mean, he's hustling. The book isn't good. Hopefully his misogynistic views have shifted.
I saw somebody in the comments on his video asking him to turn his stitches and duets on. Apparently he learned his lesson last time.
It's not going to stop people, though. Let's be honest.
No, you just download the video and clip it.
Yeah. And there was Kelly, the TikTok creator, who really went all in last time, read the book, did lives with him and everything, and was raking. She was not pulling any punches.
Kelly was out here doing God's work.
She really was. And she was like, "Oh my God, Nate, please let me do the audiobook for this." I was crying. Oh my God.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
So we had that happen this week. And then we had the dumpster fire that is RWA, Recatch on Fire.
It's the perfect intersection of our former lives and our current lives, honestly.
It truly is. I mean, I don't think there are many people who are as well positioned to speak on the RWA dumpster fire as the two of us. So obviously we work in the publishing industry, and we work primarily with romance books, not only romance books,
not
but primarily.
Exclusively, but yes, that's the bread and butter of 1852 right now.
Yes, but primarily. And in our past lives, we both practiced in the bankruptcy court.
Yes.
On opposing sides. I represented banks and Veronica represented consumers.
That's right.
And we have both appeared many times in federal bankruptcy court.
Indeed.
And RWA this week has filed for bankruptcy.
Yes.
And while many people are reporting on the news articles that have come out that have summarized the bankruptcy filings, because I'm extra, I went and downloaded the bankruptcy filings themselves.
I would expect nothing less from you. I was like, okay, the clock is ticking now. I was watching my inbox, and sure enough, somewhere in the range of about 2 hours after I started thinking about it, Heather emails me with a copy of the petition and all of the available attachments, and I was like, "That's my girl."
Yeah,
I just knew you were gonna go get them.
With subject line of "I did it."
Yes, exactly. Because she knew that I knew she was gonna do it.
Yeah. This is why you need to have a Pacer account.
Yes,
it's just necessary for life. So I went and pulled all those documents and we read through them.
That we did.
And, the petition itself, so they filed a Chapter 11, which is a attempt to restructure. They want to restructure their debt.
They're going to try and liquidate, pay what they can, and walk out of that process having settled up with what's available, not necessarily fully satisfying all of their creditors.
And it seems that they want to get rid of their biggest creditors. And their biggest creditors are these hotels that they have contracts with. Okay.
Yeah.
So they have a variety of debt, but their biggest debts are with the Marriott.
A handful of Marriott properties.
Yeah, it's a majority of Marriott properties.
Presumably, and most people in the industry are familiar with the RWA model, offering keynote speaking events and conferences and all of this stuff, right? They have to book hotels to host these events.
Yes.
And they have these outstanding contracts for events that either did not happen or are probably not going to happen
Right.
due to their financial troubles.
So what do they owe? Right? Like that's what everyone wants to know.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of reports about like, why they filed and things like that. And we can get into that in a minute.
And we should.
And we should. But what's the nitty-gritty, right? Like why are they filing for bankruptcy?
Like over 3 million at this point, right?
Yeah, they owe the Anaheim Marriott 713,000 and some change. The Austin Marriott $1.13 million and some
Mm-hmm.
change. And the Philadelphia Marriott downtown over $1 million.
Woo!
Yeah, those are the big nuts.
Yeah.
That's really
There
what.
are other outstanding debts
Yes,
on their petition.
there are. But those are the big ones. They're
Mhm.
trying to essentially and that's really why they filed for bankruptcy. They're
Right.
trying to get rid of the over $3 million
Well,
in
the
hotel.
right. And eliminating that debt and the obligation to pay on those contracts, of course, but also being in a position to have to do that because their receivables, their income, and the amount of money that they're holding in their bank accounts
Right.
is significantly insufficient to meet these
Correct.
obligations. It's not
Correct.
just that RWA is trying to get out of paying on these contracts. It's that based on all numbers, you could consult every accountant out there. They're going to tell you it's impossible for RWA to meet their obligations with the income and assets that they currently have.
Yeah, I mean, their gross profit from September 1st, 2023 to May 28th, 2024
The date of the
was
filing.
the date of the filing was $224,201.33.
Yeah.
That's their gross profit. So that's not and then they have expenditures.
Right. That's just
Right?
the cash that's coming in, right? That doesn't account
Yes.
for everything that's going out.
Payroll, which they've pared down their payroll requirements quite a bit. They've tried to avoid filing for bankruptcy, but it's frankly unavoidable based upon their office expenses,
Right.
their other expenditures that they have: speaker fees, professional fees, bank fees,
Right.
graphic design fees. I mean, just everything it takes to run a successful, business. They are a nonprofit, but they're a special kind of nonprofit.
It's still a
It's
business.
still a business. And their net revenue, if once you take out these expenditures, is negative $143,000.91.
So how did they run this organization into the ground, Heather?
Oh my God. So why do they claim that, RWA is
it, right? Because
yeah.
it's a lack of, and this will shock no one, a lack of accountability that the leadership of this organization is not responsible for what happens.
Oh yeah, I mean they are firmly planting themselves in the victim mentality. I mean they have pulled up a seat, they have cemented the seat chairs in, and they have taken a seat, and they're not moving from the victim mentality. It is wild. So along with their bankruptcy petition, their profit and loss, and a variety of other documents they had to file, they also are required to file a bankruptcy plan.
Yes.
And the plan, Veronica has prepared more of these. I have just read these on being on the bank side of things.
Yep.
But the purpose of the plan is to tell the bankruptcy court how they propose, that getting out of this debt, what debts they want to get rid of,
right.
and how they propose it will make them solvent in the future.
Right.
Yes.
The idea of the plan is to inform the court and also the United States trustee, a third party who is appointed to oversee the bankruptcy process and ensure fairness to all of the creditors.
Right.
That this is how the books balance, and this is what the debtor, in this case RWA, proposes to make everyone semi-whole or to liquidate the available assets and walk away from the bankruptcy process with a clean slate.
Correct. And they talk about in here that, they tried to work it out with the hotels. They have tried to do a variety of mitigation tactics to try to avoid bankruptcy, but they were not successful in that. And thus they have been,
all pre-bankruptcy efforts to avoid
Yes.
bankruptcy have been unsuccessful. The
Yes.
bankruptcy is now a necessity, and this is what RWA and its counsel proposes that the court and the trustee should do in order to give
Right.
Marriott and the other creditors a portion of what they're owed and allow RWA to move on and put all of this
Right.
debt behind them.
And legally speaking, they're not wrong, because what they have in the bank right now, if they were to go through a liquidation bankruptcy process, they're going through a restructuring
Restructure. Yes,
bankruptcy
correct.
process. So if they were to go through a liquidation bankruptcy process where at the other end of it, RWA would be no more,
Right.
then there are certain creditors that they have that would take, because of their priority, they would take all of the money in their bank account, leaving all of the
Right.
remaining creditors with nothing.
Right.
Okay. So for example, they owe like almost $150,000 to the Small Business Administration. They have an
Yes.
SBA loan.
Yes.
I don't know if you have ever dabbled with the SBA before, or any government entity with a loan situation, but surprise, surprise, they take priority.
There
And
are exceptions to this rule, but as a general rule, anything you owe to the U.S. government for small business loans, taxes of any kind,
taxes, yep,
student loans, all of that, restitution from criminal matters, things like that, all of that stuff is usually not, it's considered priority. So
yeah.
it's going to take precedence over like credit card debt or these
Right.
hotel contracts.
And it
In a
doesn't
lot of
matter. And it doesn't matter when you took it out in timeline
right.
period. They just jump to the front of the line.
Yep.
Because Uncle Sam's going to be made whole before anybody else.
Well, and Uncle Sam's the one
speaking.
gogoverning this bankruptcy process. You have to go to the federal courts of the United States and say, hey, I declare bankruptcy, Michael Scott, right? Okay.
Yeah.
God, that's going to be the TikTok clip, isn't it?
Yeah, sure is. Sure is.
So anyway, while you're doing the Michael Scott thing, you're actually asking the federal government to walk you through this process. And so the federal government's going to protect itself and its interests. Yes. And and Congress has over the years legislated that debts owed to the US government are usually a priority. So
correct. So the amount that they have in cash bank right now is $122,000. Okay. That's in liquid funds that they could pay out to anybody. They do have other funds, but they're restricted funds.
Right.
So, they have certain funds for different scholarships and different, advocacy that they are not allowed to just use for anything, right? For credit or for creditor debt. Okay.
Right. Well, because they're a nonprofit organization, those particular funds are structured in such a way that they're not available for debt payment.
Correct. Yeah. So they have $122,000 available in debt payment. So my point is, if they were going through a liquidation bankruptcy, Uncle Sam would swoop in, take that whole $122,000, and the remaining creditors would be left with nothing.
Nothing.
Yes. So the bankruptcy plan lays out a plan to restructure the debt, get a bunch of it basically wiped out, and then they're going to set up a payment plan to pay back certain portions of the debt so it's more equal and creditors actually receive something back as opposed to nothing. So as from a legal perspective, I don't disagree that this was probably the right move legally for RWA to do, right?
Sure.
However,
with the goal in mind that RWA will still exist on the other side of this and will continue to do what RWA does or purports to do after the bankruptcy is over.
Yeah, taking away my any emotion that I have about RWA as an organization and whether they should be in existence based upon their track record.
Right.
Legally speaking, this makes sense for what they're doing. So there's nothing untoward about the bankruptcy itself.
Yes.
What is shocking and interesting?
Not shocking, totally expected, but also took some really big cojones, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Just absolutely audacious.
In the bankruptcy plan, they state that the debtor's source, the RWA's source of income, is derived from the membership fees paid by its members, payments received from educational programs, conferences, and donations. Okay, that's how they get their money, from membership fees, payments from educational programs, conferences, and donations.
Dues, sponsorships, donations, and ticket sales.
Yeah. Prior to 2019, the debtor, RWA, had approximately 10,000 members, okay? They had a premier annual summer conference, which typically more than 2,000 people attended. 2018, that's when they entered into these conference contracts, right? Because they were planning.
They're riding high on the hog. They've got 10,000 members. The stream of income, the gross revenue is good. There is enough cash flow to justify having these future plans to do these conferences.
Things were golden.
Then what happened?
Subsequently, this is the exact language. Subsequently, predominantly due to disputes concerning diversity, equity, and inclusion issues between some members of a prior RWA board and others in the larger romance writing community, membership decreased to approximately 3,000. Due to COVID concerns, RWA held its annual conference virtually in 2020 and 2021, and subsequently, its membership reduced further.
Okay. This pisses me off so much.
So much.
Like, I don't know. I didn't practice in the district where this case was filed. This case was filed in one of the federal district courts in Texas.
Yes.
I don't know what Texas's pleading requirements are, if they have special local rules within the district or in this particular court that require them to line itemize all of the justifications for filing the bankruptcy. But
yeah, usually you don't tell the bankruptcy court why. Usually,
right, the bankruptcy court, you just show the bankruptcy court that it's necessary, right?
The bankruptcy court gives zero shits why you fell into bankruptcy.
Exactly. Yeah. And even if they require some sort of justification, which in my experience they don't, other than the numbers, the math ain't mathin', and I got to do this. That's usually the only justification you need to file. But even in a situation where you would have to give a fact basis beyond the accounting involved, I think it suffices to say that due to the pandemic and declining membership, there's insufficient revenue to meet the debtor's obligations.
That is frankly all you need to say. The fact that they threw in there, this essentially reads as, for those that don't know, this essentially reads as Courtney Milan destroyed the RWA.
Yeah. Courtney Milan and COVID are to blame.
Yeah. That's how this reads.
Mostly Courtney
Milan. Mostly Courtney Milan. Because COVID is literally it's like an afterthought that was thrown into that paragraph.
Yes, exactly.
For those that don't remember, there was a book that was, I believe, up for a Rita. I'm honestly not sure. I can't remember exactly.
Vivian, maybe. I can't remember.
Vivian.
One of them.
It was in the RWA, and Courtney Milan, who is a Chinese person of descent, read the book. The heroine in the book is apparently half Chinese. And Courtney Milan called it publicly. I believe it was a quote unquote racist fucking mess, was her exact quote. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my recollection.
That sounds like something Courtney would say.
Sure. She was on the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board of the RWA. There were two members of the RWA, one being the author and then another member, took issue.
Great personal offense to her assessment.
Yeah, great personal offense. Filed an ethics complaint against Courtney. Courtney was subsequently banned from the RWA for a year and advised and told that she could never hold a leadership position within the RWA again. So she was banned from the RWA for a year and then forever banned from holding a leadership position. Needless to say, the romance community did not agree that that was a proper response.
Yep.
So, in my opinion, the RWA caused their membership to decline with their own actions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, oh, maybe this book was a racist fucking mess. And maybe, Courtney, we shouldn't say these things like that publicly on Twitter. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should instead bring it up differently, right? Like, maybe that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the RWA talking, not me talking.
Right.
But like, you know, but
like, hey, Courtney, you were correct. But also, maybe we aren't quite so aggressive about
the way in which we approach these things. Maybe we should approach them differently. But the problem
that takes us down the road of tone policing, which is a whole different issue. But
true. But within an organization, you hold a leadership role. I could see that even being a slightly more palatable.
Sure. You're representing the organization,
action.
Right? Like,
Sure.
there can be an expectation that you're going to behave in a certain way as you represent the organization.
Correct.
That's fine.
But they didn't do that at all. Instead, they essentially sided with these white authors, by the way, the white author wrote the problematic, Chinese character, and was not apparently receptive to, criticism. And they created this issue, and they sided with these authors. And the romance community at large did not agree with that take.
And a lot of authors have since voted with their pocketbooks by leaving the organization, not renewing their memberships. Regional chapters have disaffiliated from the organization as a whole.
Correct. And so this is a problem of their own making.
Yes.
And frankly, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. This was not this was a one-time racist thing that the RWA did.
RWA has a history of engaging in platforming white authors and basically silencing and or refusing to include or recognize authors of color, and of platforming books that are problematic, like the title in question.
Correct. There are multiple instances. One of the co-founders of RWA was a Black woman, and she was pushed out of her own organization due to things having to do with race.
Yep.
And it wasn't until 2019 that a Black author won a Rita Award, which was 30 years after the inception of the Rita Award. Mm-hmm. So please tell me that you don't have any issues whatsoever. And then this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board was created to it was brought up to the RWA like, hey, you have a problem.
Yep.
And so they created a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board to address said problems, but then subsequently ignored all of the suggestions that came out of the DEI board. So understandably so, Courtney Milan, head of that board, was frustrated, I think is a light term for the emotions that she was feeling.
Rightfully so. She's in a position where she should be able to effectuate change. Correct. And she's banging her head against the brick wall of racism that is the house that RWA built.
Correct. And so, she made a comment about a book on Twitter and made it publicly, likely due to these incredible frustrations that had been building up over the years. And she wasn't wrong from those that have read the book and have said so. So, and then RWA's response is not to address the problem, the underlying problem. It's to get rid of Courtney.
Right. And it's blame shifting, right? Like, if you go after Courtney for speaking out, then you don't have to address the internal problem of continued racist behavior and of, problematic authors writing problematic stories in your ranks. It's so much easier to just say, you are the problem, Courtney, and we slap her on the wrist, we push her out, we make the whole thing about how she's behaving inappropriately as a representative of RWA.
Yeah.
As a minority woman herself, right? So racism in the response to an accusation of racism, it's just RWA's MO at this point.
It is. And you would think that when they started seeing membership fall in record numbers, that they would have had some type of a tone shift, that they would have made immediate action to try to rectify and realize, oh no, we really fucked up here.
But
You
not
would think,
RWA.
not RWA. No, we don't do that. And so the fact that they put this in their bankruptcy filings just goes to show how entrenched that mentality is in the RWA, because they saw nothing wrong with putting them in the bankruptcy filings.
They are totally the victims of Courtney's bad behavior and of a knee-jerk reaction from hypersensitive authors who no longer wanted to support and affiliate with the organization as a result of something they don't think they're responsible for.
Right. So now they have approximately 3,000. They then say that they have less than 3,000 members, and that it's increased further.
70+% decline.
Yeah.
In membership.
Some articles are quoting them as having 2,000 members. I don't see anything in the documents that give that 2,000 number. But it's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000. Yes. Okay. So let's say 2,500 to, split the difference here. So they have 2,500-ish members. Okay. They then, in their bankruptcy plan, this is what gets me. They then have a plan, right, of how they're going to increase. They have projections in there. And their projections have membership numbers essentially doubling in the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. They have projected what their revenue is going to be for 2025, 2026, and 2027. Yeah. And they are estimating that membership is going to climb precipitously to give them more cash to settle up with their creditors as part of this bankruptcy process.
Yeah, I just want to get to these numbers real quick because I was I laughed out loud. It's quite amusing, frankly. Okay. So here's their plan. Cash receipts for membership only, okay? So in 2024, end of year 2024, they have it as projected at $115,000 for membership cash receipts.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that that's based upon the 25-ish hundred members.
Yep.
They then have projected for the end of year 2025 that is going to increase to $210,500.
Only if they're raising their rates.
Right. Are they doubling their rates? And then 2026, they have $220,000. That's a $10,000 increase. And then in 2027, they have it projected at $227,000 increase. So that's like a $7,000 increase from 2026. So they believe somehow in the next year is the biggest jump. They are going to, what's that exact number? Let's do some matharoo here. 210, 500, oops, numbers, Heather. 210, 500 minus 115. $95,500. They're going to increase their membership.
Good luck with that.
In what world? How are you going to essentially double your membership in a year coming off this problematic issue?
Not with the current party line. There's just no way.
There's absolutely no way that's going to happen. Especially when you put shit like this in your bankruptcy filings, and then that's the news story. The news story isn't that you're restructuring, that you filed for bankruptcy. That would be a one day,
the Wall Street Journal whatever. All about the DEI dispute. It's this organization is being overrun by DEI, because that's the devil in the a huge cultural problem to certain people, a certain political persuasion.
Right.
No, it's just a poorly run organization that refused to take accountability for racist behavior.
And people aren't having it anymore.
No.
People are not having it, and they're using their pocketbooks to talk.
That's right.
Their wallets, their bank accounts.
Yep, absolutely.
And they're not contributing to organizations that do not serve their interests.
You know what?
You can call it cancel culture. You can call it whatever the hell you want to call it. I call it not supporting an organization that doesn't hold my values.
It's accountability culture in this
Yeah.
particular case.
I 100% agree.
You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. You act like a racist. People who don't support racism are going to leave you. They are going to abandon you. And then you're going to be crying in federal bankruptcy court about how DEI ruined your organization.
Right.
Get out of here.
What it doesn't
Best
say.
of luck to you, RWA. I hope things are sunnier when you come out on the other side of this.
Yeah, what it doesn't say is how they intend to double their membership. I'd be interested to hear that marketing plan, because I don't see it. I don't see how that's happening. I simply don't.
I agree completely.
So that is the most interesting tidbits from the RWA bankruptcy.
Yes.
I mean, we could really get down to the nitty gritty of this if you wanted to, but
that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. It's very interesting.
Yeah, we both found it fascinating, but but the meat on the bones here, so to speak, is this idea that RWA is a victim of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Apparently,
it's wild. And that Courtney Milan took down the RWA. I mean, good on you, Courtney. And you're getting credit for this. I would hold that as a badge of honor. Like, literally, that would immediately go into my bio.
We need to get this woman like a crown or a plaque or something. Yeah. Like, she single-handedly took down RWA.
Yeah. Well done. Well done, Courtney.
RWA Slayer.
Yeah. I mean, seriously.
Yep.
So that's the biggest news from this week. It was wild.
That it was.
And, you know, there are things you can learn from this. Don't be racist and expect to not be held accountable for your actions.
Yes, absolutely.
So crazy. I mean, there's more to learn from that, but, you know,
that's
the biggest takeaway.
And the great news is, because Heather is so adept at using her Pacer account, if there are any more really shocking developments throughout the bankruptcy, you know, we'll be discussing them.
Don't you worry about that. I will be popping into Pacer and downloading those files immediately.
I'm sure.
This law degree is worth something from time to time, I tell you.
And it's so much fun to like reflect on everything we used to do and still, you know, that we know our prior skill set.
Yeah.
As it applies to what we do now.
It's really interesting. I love when the two worlds cross. I do. Yes, it's fun. Me too. So until next time, and another day and another problem. This is for Book Sake.
Book and bankruptcy sake.
Yeah.